is the co-founder of the UFO International Conference, Bob?
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
As well as UFO-MegaCon. And he's going to be introduced and interviewed by Colin Woolford. So welcome them both to the stage. I shall hand you over. Colin, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I was just going to do a brief intro. You might wonder who the hell Bob Brown is. You might be wondering who the hell Colin Woolford is. I'll just say that I'm actually been an admin for Miles's BASES project on Facebook for, I can't even remember, since the early days and even before a MASH. So if you're not a member and you're on Facebook, it's a private group. It's got nearly 8,000 members, the BASES project, if you want to keep abreast of information there. I do post all Miles's videos of his BASES content. And generally it's a very good group, and that's a private group as well. So that's quite a large membership for a private group. So yeah, check it out, BASES project on Facebook. But yeah, I guess the big question is then if you have never been over to the United States of America, if you've never attended a UFO conference, then this gentleman who has been over here now for some 3 weeks, I've been sort of acting as a chaperone for Bob Brown. Well, basically, he was one of the founding members of a very popular international UFO conference. It was known as the International Ufo Congress, I believe, Bob, when it first started out. So maybe we should just go right in at the deep end, and just maybe you could tell us. I mean, actually, what I will do is just as you know, Wikipedia, as much as you can trust Wikipedia, I can tell you what I found out on Wikipedia about the origins of the conference. And it was supposedly an annual conference. It was just established in Arizona at first, and no doubt Bob will correct me if I'm wrong about that, in 1991. So, you know, we're going back some 30 plus years now. That carried on till 2010, and then there was like a change. It changed over ownership, and maybe Bob will tell us the reasons why that happened later on. But it was a very, very successful conference, one that I know Miles had gone to some of the early conferences in America. I actually went to the last two ones just before it changed hands. So I believe it was 2010, I think. Then Open Minds took it over. But so it wasn't just you, was it, Bob? I mean, when you first started this massive UFO international world, what I think it is accepted as being the biggest international conference on UFOs in the world. It's still seen as that. You aren't quite the co-founder, or maybe you were a co-founder, so there was another gentleman involved. So maybe you can go into a little bit more about how that all got started.
Roger, Colin, I can do that. I suppose if we're going to talk about the beginnings, maybe I should give a little foundation. We have to go back a little bit before the event actually was founded. I had been studying all of these subjects, UFO, paranormal, and everything that comes under that handle, since I've been 9 years old. So I'd been studying it deeply and seriously for decades before I ever became involved publicly. So kind of what happened was I was making films at that time as my primary means of making a living at that particular moment. We have to go back about, say, 1984-ish. And at that time, I would go to Europe every year to the Milan Film Festival, the MIFED, and to the Cannes Film Festival, not the big Cannes, but the MIPCON, which was the smaller Cannes Film Festival, still extremely big film festival. And I would go to these two events to look for aviation films to distribute in the United States, and to hopefully sell one or two that I had made for distribution into Europe. So along about, I think, 87, I had read a book called Light Years. Now, Light Years was written by a guy named Gary Kinder, and it took a second look at the Billy Meyer case. Can I ask just a show of hands? It's hard to see, but how many of you, is there anybody out here that doesn't know the Billy Meyer case? Oh, well, a couple of hands. Okay, just briefly. Billy Meyer was a one-armed Swiss farmer, not really a farmer, but a farm caretaker. And he began having contact with extraterrestrials in his youth, when he was a kid. And at this point in time, he was a man, a middle-aged man. He had lost one arm in the interim in his life's journeys. His life journey is fascinating. It's one of the most fascinating reads you will ever have to find out the life that he lived before he became Billy Meyer, the one-armed Swiss farmer caretaker that was interacting with UFOs. You'll find that it was an extremely spiritual journey, that he was educated in ashrams and grew up in ashrams. I mean, this is a special human being. So, Wendell Stevens, Colonel Wendell Stevens, retired, United States Air Force, was the chief investigator from the United States that had went over to Switzerland many, many times, sometimes for weeks at a time, to investigate the Billy Meyer case. And he was the one that took all of the initial information about the Billy Meyer case back to the United States and disseminated it to everyone there that had an interest. Am I boring you guys? Okay.
Keep going, Bob. Keep going.
I feel like I'm rambling on here, and I just, I hope I'm not. So what happened was, I was a member of 2 UFO research organizations at that time. Excuse me, they've slipped my memory for a second here.
Wasn't the cause, was it? Wasn't one of
Yeah.
the Center for CAUS, was it? I don't know.
There were two UFO organizations, research organizations, that had limited resources, and they were both membership supported. And I was a member of both of them. So I was getting ready actually to go to some of Wendell's lectures. He was coming somewhat near me with a lecture about the Billy Meyer situation. And I was prepared to go to it. I was anxiously looking forward to go to it. And both of my organizations came out with the monthly newsletter, and they both published simultaneously the same story. The Billy Meyer case is a load of fill in the blank. Not real. Don't waste your time. So I believed them. I believed these organizations. APRO was one. The other one will come back to me in a second. But it's not so important that you know their names, but what they did and that they existed. And that they did this thing. They published this to their membership. So in the book Light Years by Gary Kinder, he told what really happened back then. And what had really happened back then was that both organizations, being competitive with each other and searching for support from the same limited membership base, they both decided independently and simultaneously to torpedo the case rather than take a chance that their competitor would actually investigate it and report on it favorably. So it was a preemptive step by both organizations. Now, it came about because when each organization contacted Billy Meyer to find out more, to try to get an investigator sent over to Switzerland, to interview Billy, to go to the sites where the contacts were occurring, to look at the physical evidence, to talk to the witnesses, get their testimonies, all of this, everything you do in a true investigation. Billy said, yeah, come on over. And each organization said to him, well, we will, as soon as you sign our exclusivity agreement. Billy said, what? What are you talking about? There's nothing exclusive. This is the information I have, the information that the Pleiadians are giving me to share with the world is for the world. There's no restrictions on it. It's available to anyone that wants it, anyone that needs to know about it. Just send your people over. Well, it would have taken a tremendous chunk out of their resources to have sent somebody all the way to Switzerland for a few weeks to do this. So they elected to torpedo the case. So the book Light Years by Gary Kinder set the record straight. And as I'm reading it, by that time I had developed an internal sense. My body would tell me I could read a book, and very quickly I would know if there's truth in it or not. And by this time, I was beginning to rely on that because it was proving to be accurate. So I knew there was something to the Billy Meyer case after all, and in fact, I suspected that it's probably the most important case that we, the public, had to look at that time. So my plan was to go to my film festivals in Europe. Between the MIPCon and the MIFED, there was 9 days. I'm going to rent a car. I'm going to drive to Switzerland. I'm going to see if I can find this place called Schmidt-Rudy and see if I can find some of these sites. I'm going to see if I can meet Billy Meyer. This was my plan. So, excuse me. I went over to do this, and a rather extraordinary thing happened to me. I'm not going to go into detail about it. I actually talked to Miles about this in a previous interview he did with me, a shorter interview. And that record is there, and most of you have probably seen it. So I had this extraordinary occurrence happen. A voice talked into my head. It led me to one person out of 6,500 people at this Cannes Film Festival. Led me directly to one person. That person had already investigated Billy Meyer. That person had been to the farm in Schmidt-Rudy multiple times, spent weeks there. She had done all of the work that needed to be done. And we talked about this and everything ufological through the night. The sun was making the sky light in the morning by the time we broke up our talk and went back to our hotels for a couple hours sleep. When I got back to the United States, I couldn't let this go because, well, I don't know about all of you, but this is the first time a voice ever spoke in my head and led me to someone. It was powerful, extremely powerful for me as a person. And I said, this means more even than what it is on the surface. I'm supposed to be doing something with this. So as I've already mentioned to you, I was making films at that time, documentary films, mostly on aviation. So when I got back, I said, little voice in my head said, maybe you need to be making films about ufology. So the next year and 3 months-ish out of my life, I did just that. I took in a partner, wonderful guy named Ted Oliphant. He and I crisscrossed the United States many times, meeting everyone we could. That was anybody within the ufological scene, interviewing them, talking to them, going to sites, looking at evidence. We ended up making a 93-minute feature-length documentary called UFOs: A Need to Know. So in the process of doing this, of course, I went to UFO conventions myself. I went to those from the age of 11 or 12 on. And I'd never stopped going to them. But back then, those conferences had issues, in my mind. They were all very short. They seemed to always have exactly the same people speaking. And there were far too few of them. So one of the people that I got to meet during this investigative journey of a year and 3 months was Wendell Stevens. Now, I had a very great mentor in the ufological field before Wendell. That was Dr. James Harder, professor emeritus at the University of California, Berkeley. He was MUFON's head investigator for abduction in those years. And he is the one that interviewed, under hypnosis, Travis Walton right after his occurrence. He was the one that interviewed Charlie Hickson and Parker right after the Pascagoula incident. And all of the famous incidents, big and little, James was involved, Dr. James Harder. And I would go to his house. He had an amazing house along the ridgeline of Berkeley, looking down over the San Francisco Bay, right out at San Francisco. You talk about the $1 million view. So this was my original close personal friend that indeed was a mentor for me and taught me a lot, introduced me to a lot of people. Before anyone ever heard of Dr. Stephen Greer, I met him. I met him at Dr. Harder's house. I said, Bob, come on up. I'm going to have a guest tonight that you need to meet. That kind of thing. That went on all the time. But now I was going to get to meet Wendell Stevens during this investigation, the man that spent more time than anybody with Billy Meyer. This was going to be the highlight, man. This is like, you can't get better. Right up there. So I did meet Wendell, and of course, he was a retired Air Force. He's a pilot, a patriot, an incredible man, a man with an absolute passion to get to some truth about UFOs, about our visitors. So I got to spend immense amounts of time with Wendell. He became my best friend, along with being my mentor. And shortly after we finished UFOs: A Need to Know, Wendell began planning a separate individual conference. He called it the International Ufo Conference. And I was there throughout that whole process. I helped him a little bit on the planning. I worked at the conference on his behalf. And what was wonderful and beautiful about it was that he literally did bring people over from out of the United States. There wasn't but maybe one regular voice at that conference. It wasn't the same old that we had everywhere. It was new, different, fresh, exciting, because there were new people there. telling new cases, new investigations, new evidence that we had not been hearing previously. So we did this conference. Wendell really did it. I helped him, along with others. And it was a little bit of a rocky road, that conference. You know, we actually had to move hotels in the middle of it. It was held in Tucson, Arizona. And we had a nice ballroom in this hotel. But lo and behold, a couple of days before the event was to convene, the hotel calls us and says, I'm sorry, but we're going to need the space on Sunday. So you got to be out Saturday night. This happened. So we actually had to take that conference and move it clear across Tucson to another hotel for Sunday morning. That was amazing.
That's crazy. I mean, Jesus.
I'm sorry. Forgive me. Forgive me. I don't know when to shut up if I start.
No, not at all, Bob. I'm sure everyone's enjoying hanging on your every word. But I mean, I think I just wanted to say something about Wendell because I don't think a lot of people will know. I mean, you say like he was ex-Air Force and everything, but I think we can talk about this now, I assume. If not, cut me off. But one of the reasons he was so into the subject, and I only kind of found out about it, I guess, after he died, was he had a much closer involvement with the subject than maybe many people realize. Is there anything you can say about that?
I'm happy to talk about that. So anyway, let me finish the first thought up really quickly. So we did this conference, and after it's all over, I said to Wendell, Wendell, you are onto something. This is beautiful, but there are ways to make it bigger, better, for the speakers, for the attendees, for the delegates looking for truth. We need to form a conference and take your base idea and my new ideas and combine them and move forward with something that will set the field on fire. A venue that will bring it out of the Stone Age and into the light. So that's how the International UFO Congress came about. Now that's all done. Now we'll go on to your next question. Wendell, there's so many things about Wendell that people just don't know. Wendell knew more about everything ufological he's forgotten more than I'll ever know, okay? That's the only way I can put it. He knew everyone. You could not mention a person, an incident, a case, that he wouldn't tell you all about it. And in the beginning, I really thought that this was just because of the work that he had done and the contacts and the connections that he had made to stay literally in the middle of everything going on ufological. And to a great degree, that was true because he was the hardest working guy I would ever see. I would be at his house for long periods of time, hanging out, and his phone would ring constantly, and he would answer it. And it would be people from all over the world calling him. He always had time for everybody. He always did. And I've tried to emulate that. People come up to me and tap me on the shoulder anywhere, and can you tell me about this? What do you think about that? And if they have the time, I really will seriously tell them. I will. And that's trying to follow in Wendell's footsteps. So, extraordinary things about Billy Meyer case, right? Stuff from the inside, from being right there, small minor things and details that when you add them all up, you know absolutely that this stuff happened, that Meyer was contacted and contacted continuously and taken up on the ships continuously. Real. Real as me and Colin sitting here talking to you guys. But where Wendell's real expertise sort of shone was in talking about the crashes in the southwest of the United States from the 50s through the 60s. Corona, Roswell, Kingman, Santa Fe, 8 or 9 of them. Major crash retrieval cases. He knew everything about them. Now this was right in front of my nose for years, and I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Now, the person that finally told us the truth about this and revealed it was Harry Drew. Now, Harry Drew is an amazing character. He was a historian by profession, a PhD degreed historian. He has written historical texts on major incidents throughout history that are in every major historical library in the world. Within this field, extremely well known. But at the same time, Harry, because of his connections throughout the world, traveling internationally, dealing with other historians, crossing borders freely, probably will not be too big a surprise to all of you to realize that Harry also had a little bit of a connection with the CIA. So, Harry's last book that he wrote before he died was on the crashes at Kingman, Arizona. Now, the reality is that the crashes at Kingman, Arizona turned out to be much more important than Roswell, because there were multiple sightings, multiple landings, multiple crashes over a little bit of a period of time. Incredibly important case. And Harry was able to dig up and verify names, dates, people, places, occurrences, all of it found out, documented, qualified, and reported on. And his book will tell you the truth of the Kingman crashes. So, where did he get the information? Now, Wendell was very free in talking about and sharing information about all the Southwest crashes in amazing detail. But he went a step farther with Harry. He told Harry where all the smoking guns were buried. He told Harry where all the surviving witnesses were, who they were. He told Harry where all the remaining evidence was. He told Harry exactly where the spots were for the landings. So much so that Harry was able to go out there and dig up the United States Air Force's trash from being on site. The big question: how did Wendell know all of this? How? On his deathbed, he shared with Harry that he was the United States Air Force officer that was in charge of the Air Force's presence on the Southwest crash retrieval teams. He was the head of those teams for the Air Force. Right in front of my nose for decades. I never put two and two together. Shame on me. But it all fits. It's hand in glove. My best friend, my mentor, he was that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we all miss Wendell. I mean, I think I saw him at a couple of conferences, but sadly I never really got a chance to talk to him. I know his health was declining towards the end there. I also met, as you say, Harry Drew a few years ago, actually, in Phoenix, where he was signing books of that large book about at least 3 crashes in the Kingman area of Arizona, and so supposedly your good friend Wendell was actually head of the teams and that. But some people might say, well, how was Wendell able to bring out this information? Was it because that maybe he didn't, obviously in his lifetime, he didn't say that he was this. It was only after death, so it was almost like a sort of, he was putting the information out there. Maybe he had some support from behind the scenes by people in the military to get the information out there, but obviously not attach his name to it at the time. Do you have a view on that, Bob?
I can talk a little bit about that. I can, Colin. Wendell was free with his information, but he did the best he could not to step over the line. In other words, all the people that wrote books and did investigations on all the other crashes, right, were ultimately using his information to begin their investigations. He gave them a lot, but not everything. The only person he gave everything to was Harry. And of course, that was the last major crash that had never been investigated. And Wendell knew that it was close to the end. So he flat out gave him everything that he had. Now, it wasn't that Wendell didn't pay a price, Colin. He did. There was a point in his life where he stepped over the line, and they slapped him down hard. They slapped him down very hard. They set him up for a charge of, say it what it is, child molestation. Every man has weaknesses. And if you are in positions like he was, or any high military position, you're going to be analyzed up one side and down the other. They're going to be profilers and handlers looking at you. They're going to look at you for every weakness, every tendency that any foreign agent might use to try to get you talking, blackmailed, whatever. So all I'm trying to say is that when you are that high in those institutions, they pretty much know who you are and what makes you tick. So they took a young girl, under 18, that looked 28 and acted 35, and they got to him. They charged him. He was convicted. He spent some time in the pokey, but he used it to good use. Most people don't know this, but he wrote a lot of books. I'm not sure how many, 14, 18, I don't know, a lot. He wrote quite a few of them from prison. So he did that time. He served that time. They slapped him down hard. They said, you step over the line again, it's not going to be prison. You'll check out. He got the message, and that's where things laid.
Well, I mean, having done so many of his conferences, so I mean, as I said, it began in 1991. Then was the first one. But Wendell, I guess, went to the sidelines, did he, after a couple of years, was it? Or literally, was it the next year that you started taking over more for the conference, the Congress?
Well, what happened was our first 3 conferences, Wendell's first conference, that one in Tucson I told you about earlier, was the best conference I'd ever been to. I think the best conference ever staged in the world up to that time. But it didn't have a lot of people there. And so the bottom line is, when you bring in all these people from overseas, you put them up, you pay them an honorarium, you put them in a hotel, you're buying all their meals, the bill gets pretty high. You pay the hotel, you got advertising, you got all these expenses. He lost a lot of money. He wasn't a rich guy. I mean, he had a pension, Air Force pension. That's what he lived on. But he lost a lot of money. Our first event, we doubled the attendance, got a much better handle on the costs. We still lost an awful lot of money. The second year, we lost an awful lot of money. The third year, we lost less, but still an awful lot of money. After the third year, Wendell said to me, "Bob, I cannot afford to lose another penny. I will support you. I will be your partner. I will stay with you on this and be with this until my dying day. However, I cannot have a penny of financial responsibility. I just can't do it anymore. I've exhausted my savings and, every other penny I need to live." So at that point, he bowed out of responsibility, not out of being behind the scenes and helping, but out of financial responsibility. Two different things.
Yeah. Were you living in Arizona at this time, or
No.
No, you were.
No. Initially, I was living in California, and I can't really remember the chronology, but yeah, at that point in time, I was in California.
We should just say that you were born in Chicago, Illinois. Is that correct?
I was born in Chicago, Illinois. Yes.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, over the years, I mean, obviously you must have seen it all. Lots of controversial speakers. I mean, it's a controversial subject, the UFOs. I mean, it's becoming a lot more credible now, of course. But I mean, you must have pretty much seen it all: the tantrums, the tears, the crazies. I mean, is there anything specific? I mean, I know it's a broad church of people you've had over the years, and I should say that. Me and Bob were up in Blackpool. I don't know if anyone was there for the Awakening conference just a few weeks ago, and it was very good that Bob was invited to come over and read out an obituary, sadly, where we lost a lot of prominent people in ufology over the last few years. But I should also say that Bob's bought some of his DVDs of his Congress, that he's picked some choice cuts. So we haven't quite set that up, but we'll make sure over this weekend that you've got an opportunity. If you want to see some of the classic history of the UFO Congress, we will have some on display you can buy and check it out. Because I know when I went there, and we'll get onto this a little bit later, how the conference transformed into something else after Bob sort of left the field. But I bought about 15 of his DVDs home because it was, for me, absolutely, as a UFO researcher myself, and I have been for some 32 years, the amount of information, that moment in time captured in front of the camera in the 1990s, and from that moment onward, it's just absolute gold dust. So I think there is some sort of negotiations to get this footage out. I think there's some deals going on, maybe to give it a wider audience. But just to say that Bob has brought some DVDs with him over to England at this time. But yeah, getting back to my original point, I mean, I guess you have seen it, or is controversial speakers, I mean, is that a good thing, even if people find the claims totally lacking credibility? Or, I mean, there's always footage, isn't there? People will present footage. I know there's that famous case, I know we've talked about this before, that Dr. Jonathan Reed, I don't know if everyone's familiar with that case. That was a hugely controversial one. The guy who was attacked in Washington State, supposedly by an alien, and filmed it. And and I believe he ended up putting it in his fridge. I mean, there's some pretty wild stories out there, and obviously you've met all the big names, Travis Walton. I should imagine Bud Hopkins. I don't know. You can go on and on. I mean, is there some notable speakers for you who you respect more than others, and you would say that these people are for you? You recognise on a level with Wendell Stevens at all?
Wow, that's a huge question.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, you know Travis, don't you? Obviously, that's a famous case from Phoenix.
Yes, I do know
Walton.
Travis, and I got to meet Travis not long after the incident occurred. And again, of course, I did that, via my mentor, Dr. James Harder.